Hello everyone, I'm Steve. Mark's working late tonight, and this is Smokey Steve and Mark. Either welcome or welcome back, and happy Thursday. It's Friday Eve. I'm very, very excited. So why the hell am I in the bathroom? We'll just go quick. The wedding is coming up in about a week and a half, and I wanted to have some very, very small blonde tips on my very short, thin hair. So I'm going to bleach my hair, and then while I'm setting, we're going to sit down on the set and have a little bit of a chat. We're going to do a story time, but the difference is I'm going to read a story. So it will be a work from Edgar Allan Poe, The Telltale Heart, as written by him, as read by me. Okay? So the first things first, I'm going to have to dye my head. You've all done this. You've watched TikTok. You know how it goes. So let me get myself together here, and I'll be back when we're ready to settle in, okay? All right.
A few moments later.
Okay, so I'm going to let this sit for a while. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to bleach it twice, but I'm going to give this about half an hour. And I think instead of sitting there itching my head, I'll finish this up, come back blonde, and then we'll get into a story time, okay? See you soon.
2,000 years later.
Alright, so you ready for the reveal? 2 bleaches. And we got it to about there. It'll probably look better in light light. But, yeah, it's not white, but it's close. The goal was to do this. Obviously, if I shaved, I wouldn't look like so much of a moron. Like a broke-down Pete Davidson. And trim it, so when it grows in, I'll have a little bit of blonde on the end. So, it hurt like a bitch. I haven't done this in, 2 years, so. So tonight, we are going to share a little story time. Not of mine, but of a short story that I remember reading in high school, and always thought was a little bit spooky. So I'm going to read tonight Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart. So Poe, maybe some of you are familiar, he's a poet, he's a writer. His work, most famous probably is The Raven, quote, "The Raven nevermore." Certainly there were some other ones too. I think his shortest poem was called Deep in Earth. And the poem is, "Deep in earth my love is lying and I must weep alone." You think I could have wrote that. So, story time tonight, so grab a seat, hang out, take it easy, turn your phone away from you. There's nothing to see but me reading, so just chill out, relax, and enjoy. The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. True, nervous, dreadfully nervous. I had been, and am. But why will you say that I am mad? Hearken and observe how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none. I loved the old man. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. One of his eyes resembled that of a vulture, a pale blue eye, with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh so gently. I put in a dark lantern so that no light shone out, and then I thrust in my head. I moved in slowly, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. And then, when my head was well into the room, I undid the lantern cautiously, so that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. I did this for 7 long nights. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in the opening of the door. A watch's minute hand moves no more slowly than did mine. When I had waited a long time, very patiently, I resolved to open a very little crevice in the lantern, until, at length, a single dim ray, like the thread of the spider, shot out and fell upon the vulture's eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. A dull blue, with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow of my bones. Now there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury, as the beating of the drum stimulates the soldier into courage. A new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once, only once. It was an instant I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. But for many minutes, the heart beat on the muffled sound. At length, it ceased. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. The old man was dead. His eye would trouble me no more.
Ooh, a proper storytelling tonight. Ooh, I just love a good spooky story, don't you? Oh, especially the classics. And I have some interesting, creepy facts all about America's master of mystery and the macabre, Edgar Allan Poe. Now, probably the most oddest thing about Edgar Allan Poe is that he wasn't really odd or creepy at all. In fact, he was hardworking and brilliant, and he changed the face of American literature. Now, with that said, today Poe is still recognized as a rather deranged individual, and that's because of a scathing obituary and biography that was written by one of Poe's literary rivals. His name was Rufus Griswold, and he was upset about some supposed letters that were written about him, which later turned out to be untrue. Now, Griswold portrayed Poe as a deranged madman, womanizing, drug-addicted, and stripped of all morality. Now, as I said, this later turned out to be untrue. In fact, these supposed letters that were written by Poe to Griswold proving his lunacy, they were later actually proved to be forged. Poe was the middle child of 3, and before he was the age of 4, both of his parents died, and he was taken in by a wealthy yet miserly merchant named John Allan and his wife Frances, and they were the ones that christened the boy with his name, Edgar Allan Poe. Now, poverty was definitely Poe's muse. Now, you see, he received very little financial support from his foster father, and by the time he was in college, he had embarked on a journey of poverty and debt. I mean, financial issues haunted Poe most of his life, and by the time that Allan died, well, Poe was left out of the will. Nonetheless, providing for an illegitimate child that Allan never even met. I can't believe how that made Poe feel, but he was determined more than ever to become a successful writer. Now, at the age of 27, he married his first cousin, Virginia Clem, and she was only 13 years old. Okay, definitely a creepy fact by today's standard. Yeah, for sure. But unfortunately and sadly, she died at the age of 24 from tuberculosis. Poe went on to write for many magazines and publishing his own short stories, and 1845's publication of The Raven made him a household name. He finally got the notoriety and success he had been seeking. Now, probably the most creepiest fact about Poe is his mysterious death. In 1849, Poe went missing for 5 days and was later found in Baltimore in a state that was worse for the wear and delirious. He was taken to the hospital where he died very soon after at the age of 40. Now, no autopsy was performed and he was buried 2 days later, and no cause of death could be found. His death was attributed to congestion of the brain. Now, experts and scholars propose everything from rabies to carbon monoxide poisoning and even murder. But to this day, Edgar Allan Poe's death remains a mystery. A rather fitting legacy, don't you think?
If you still think me mad, you will think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. First, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. Next, I took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the board so cleverly that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. It was 4 o'clock, still dark at midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I to fear? There entered 3 men, officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused, and the officers had been deputied to search the premises. I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man, I mentioned, was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house and bade them search. Search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasures, secure and undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and desired them to rest from their fatigue, while I myself placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which I reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things. But ere long, I found myself getting pale and wished them gone. I fancied a ringing in my ears. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued, until, at length, I found that the noise was not within my ears. I talked more fluently, with a more heightened voice, yet the sound increased. It was a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I paced the floor, but the noise steadily increased. Oh God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore, but the noise arose over all. It grew louder, and louder, and louder. Was it possible they heard not? Almighty God, no, they heard, they suspected, they knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. I felt that I must scream or die, and now, again, hark! Louder, louder, louder. Villains, I shrieked, dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. Here, here. It is the beating of his hideous heart. I remain Smokey Steve. So I hope you enjoyed it. We're gonna flash back out for a little bit. We'll see if there's anything else to show with my hair. We might have some creepy facts. You might have seen them. We might have more. Who knows? And stay put. Hope you enjoyed the story. Thanks.
Ha 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 ha.